What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Monkey King MMA show. This week we have UFC Atlantic City. And before I get into all my predictions and breakdown, I'm going to do a betting recap of last week's card, UFC Vegas 89. I ended up down 4.44 units, which brings our running total for 2024 to up 6.13 units. Wasn't the best card for me, but if you're in my Discord, I called out some live plays. One of them being under 2.5 rounds in Julian Erosa versus Ricardo Ramos. Another one being Peyton Talbot moneyline. If you're not in my Discord, make sure to go to the description of this video and join the Discord immediately. I post all of my plays there early, but not only that, I treat this place as a priority for all of my MMA discussion. So make sure to join if you haven't already. And let's get right into the predictions. First up on the bout order, we have Angel Pacheco versus Caolan Loughran. Initially, I thought that Caolan Loughran had the power to KO Angel Pacheco, but the more I look at tape, I think that if they keep this fight standing, Pacheco is going to work his way into the pocket. He's going to be using his boxing, and he's going to go to work on Loughran. I think Loughran's path to victory is going to be to get his takedowns working early against Pacheco. I don't know how his ground and pound is going to look. Depending on how his ground striking looks, I think he can find an early TKO or just work his way to a decision. Just grind his way out and just dominate Pacheco on the ground. Ultimately, I'm not betting on this fight, but I'll take Caolan Loughran to win. We move on up the card to Andre Petroski versus Jacob Malkoun. I think that Jacob Malkoun is going to be walking Andre Petroski around, using that jab and then slipping out of the range. I think Andre Petroski, realizing that he's down on the scorecards after eating a couple of these jabs, he's going to be shooting for a panic takedown. And Jacob Malkoun's going to see it coming. He's going to defend it. He's going to keep walking him down. Eventually, he's going to choose to offensively grapple whenever he catches Andre Petroski backed up against the cage. And I think that that's how this fight goes. I think Jacob Malkoun ultimately wins this fight via decision. We move on up the card to Viktoriia Dudakova versus Melissa Gatto. So Melissa Gatto is a dog fighter. She's super scrappy. She has sneaky Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She'll use submissions to get up or to get on top control and to work her ground game even better. I think that she's going to be struggling in this matchup in particular because Dudakova is a very, very clean striker. She has her own takedowns. I think that she's going to be able to keep this standing, and she's going to be peppering up Gatto, and I think she wins a sound decision, honestly. I don't think that Gatto is really better in any way, and I think that Dudakova is going to be dominating her in all realms in this fight. So I'm going with Viktoriia Dudakova to win via decision. We move on up the card to Ibo Aslan versus Anton Turkalj. These guys already fought in Brave. It looked like they had beef before the fight happened. And Ibo Aslan basically rushed in, tried to get the finish. Eventually, Anton Turkalj took over the ground game, got the submission. And yeah, I think this is going to turn out like a grudge match. I think there's a chance that Ibo Aslan gets the round 1 KO, or there's a chance Anton Turkalj survives through the chaos in round 1 and, battles back. I don't know how he would win the fight. I think he has a whole wide arsenal of ways that he could potentially win the fight. So I think Anton Turkalj is the likely person to win this fight. I initially told my server that I thought Aslan would get a round 1 KO, but I'm probably going to flip on that. I'm going to say that Anton Turkalj gets the win here. Probably not betting on this fight. We move on up the card to Denis Buzukja versus Connor Matthews. So Denis Buzukja is likely going to be fighting for his UFC career because he has 2 UFC fights and both of them are losses. This is where he has to show that he can win against UFC level competition. Connor Matthews, rumor has it that he has the hardest hands on the East Coast. I've genuinely heard that from some of my East Coast buddies. They've said that they heard that Connor Matthews has some of the hardest hands. He's been taking over this East Coast scene. I think that he currently trains with the New England Cartel. That's what I saw in the interview, at least. That's what he said. And yeah, he's tearing up the East Coast. Denis Buzukja is going to make this a firefight. I think he's going to go into the pocket, be willing to exchange hook for hook. And I think we're going to see him really show his heart. And we're going to see him fight for his career. Connor Matthews, he does have a little bit of a club and sub. He's very confident in his submission game. So whenever he does hurt his opponent or drop his opponent, he might jump on a submission. So that's just something to think about. I think for this fight, I have Connor Matthews winning this fight by finish. I'm really high on him as a prospect, and I hope he gets the job done. We move on up the card to Julio Arce versus Herbert Burns. So this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, in my opinion. I think Julio Arce is going to be peppering up Herbert Burns. But the only thing that makes this a little bit more complicated is that Herbert Burns has a little bit of a reach advantage. It's reported that he has a 4-inch reach advantage, 74 inches versus Julio Arce's 70 inches. And I think that immediately whenever this fight starts, he's going to be diving on a double leg, or he's going to be clinching and then trying to get this fight against the cage and trying to get this fight to the ground, do his work. I think he does have an ACL surgery that he just had maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and I think that that might play a factor whenever this fight goes into the later rounds. I think Julio Arce is going to wear Herbert Burns down and ultimately just outstrike him, land some damaging shots, and win this fight. We move on up the card to Virna Jandiroba versus Loopy Godinez. In the stand-up, I think that Loopy Godinez is the cleaner striker, but Virna Jandiroba has a lot of ways to make this ugly. I think the moment she gets the clinch going, Virna Jandiroba is very tricky. She's very sticky, and she doesn't give you any space to breathe, to move. If the clinch doesn't work out, if she can't get you to the ground, she'll start looking for your knees. She'll tie your knees up, get you in a knee bar. She'll threaten a lot of things, and she's very good about it. She has that size and strength, because not many people can put Angela Hill in the danger that Virna Jandiroba was able to. Ultimately, I have Virna Jandiroba winning this fight, actually. I think that she will give Loopy Godinez a lot of trouble, and she'll come away with the upset. I think plus 160 is an absurd number to have her at. I don't think she's that much of an underdog. We'll see whenever the fight comes. I have Virna Jandiroba winning this one. We move on up the card to probably my favorite fight of this month. Favorite fight on this card for sure. Nate Landwehr versus Jamall Emmers. Nate the Train is back. Jamall Emmers is going to want to be keeping this as a clean fight. He's going to want to use his straight punches, his jab. Occasionally he throws that cross just naked to try and time it and just counter his opponent coming in. He's very fast. He's a fast striker. He's very clean. But I think Nate the Train has the ability to win this fight. I think Jamall Emmers, if he misses on a jab and overextends, I think he might get countered by Nate the Train. I think Nate has a lot of ability to enter the pocket here and clip Jamall Emmers. And I think that once Jamall Emmers feels that power of Nate, he's gonna be scrambling. I think Nate the Train has a lot of upset potential. Probably not betting on this fight, but I have Nate the Train winning this fight. I gotta ride with the dog here, man. I think this matchup is gonna be very interesting because of where they prefer to be. I think Nate wants to be in the pocket, whereas Jamall wants to be fighting a clean fight on the outside. And I honestly hope that Nate gets it done. I have Nate winning this fight. We move on up the card to Chidi Njokuani versus Rhys McKee. This fight is very interesting because Chidi Njokuani is moving down to welterweight. He's moving down from 185 pounds to 170 pounds. Last time he made this cut in Bellator, he reportedly told journalists that he felt like his voice was disappearing. His body has never felt like that bad. He made a lot of negative comments about how it made him feel making that cut to 170. I think there's an off chance that Chidi Njokuani might choose to just miss weight, come in at like 174 pounds, and just chin Rhys McKee. I think he might have that power advantage and just chin him. So I'm waiting for weigh-ins, but if he comes in at 170 and starts looking like a little like skeleton of himself, I think Rhys McKee moneyline is just cash. And I'm very high on Rhys McKee. I think his durability is going to be there, especially in this matchup. And yeah, I have Rhys McKee getting it done here. We move on up the card to Bill Algeo versus Kyle Nelson. So neither of these guys are from like completely talent-stacked gyms. Bill Algeo runs his own gym. He has a couple of amateur fighters training under him. And then Kyle Nelson trains over at House of Champions, reported by Typology. And yeah, Kyle Nelson, he has a couple of training partners who are veterans. They're from other promotions like Bellator, like PFL. It's not the greatest fighters, but also it helps to have some of that veteran experience that you're training with night in and night out. I think Bill Algeo has the perfect style that counters Kyle Nelson. I think Kyle Nelson is going to be far too low output. And I think as rounds 2 and 3 come along, I think Bill Algeo is going to be just peppering up Kyle Nelson from the outside. I think his punch numbers are going to be crazy. I think Kyle Nelson's path to victory is going to be to clinch up Bill Algeo, take him to the cage, hold him there, and just score some control time, I guess. I think Bill Algeo is going to be knowing this, and he's going to have a plan for this. He's going to break off the clinch. He's going to be getting some... He's just going to be outscoring Kyle Nelson, in my opinion. I have Bill Algeo to win this via decision. We move on up the card to Nursulton Ruziboev versus Sedriques Dumas. Sorry, I said that first name a little bit weird. But this number on Ruziboev is quite ridiculous. Ruziboev hasn't fought any proven opponents. I think a lot of Ruziboev's opponents kind of fold after they eat the first big shot from Ruziboev. Sedriques Dumas is a very good kickboxer. He has good IQ. He's able to fight people who can land big shots, like Azaitar, for example. Azaitar was landing big counters to Sedriques Dumas. Whenever Sedriques Dumas threw a naked leg kick, Azaitar would be countering with that big right hand over the top. I think Dumas is going to be holding his own in this fight, and people are counting him out. I have Sedriques Dumas, the underdog, coming away with the upset victory in this fight. We move on up the card to Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva, if he did any kind of tape study, he should be knowing that he needs to land low kicks in this matchup. Chris Weidman is very tough. He's a durable guy. He said in an interview earlier this week that he truly believes that he is the best whenever he puts everything together. Whenever he puts all the jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and striking together, there's nobody in any weight class in the UFC better than Chris Weidman. That's what he said from his mouth himself in an interview earlier this week. I think Chris Weidman, he's definitely not elite, but he's going to be durable enough to, stand in there with Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva has a tendency to have lackluster performances against the lower level guys, and then he has great performances against streaking contenders like Alex Pereira whenever he was on his come up. So it's going to be an interesting fight to watch for sure. I think Bruno Silva KO in round 1 is very live, but no way Chris Weidman goes out like that. I think Chris Weidman survives the fire. He hangs in there at least to round 3 or a decision. And I think, honestly, if it goes to round 3, Chris Weidman has a chance to turn the fight around and start making it look like he's winning. But ultimately, I have Bruno Silva winning this fight. I just don't believe in Chris Weidman. We move on up the card to Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. This one's going to be exciting. Vicente Luque has really good striking, very sneaky striking. I think his head kicks are very sneaky. He doesn't have much wind up behind him. And Joaquin Buckley, obviously, he can move forward and just throw dangerous looping hooks. And they kind of catch his opponents by surprise because he moves forward so explosively. One moment he's like 5 feet away from you. The next second he's right in front of your face. And his right hand's coming over the top and you don't even see it coming. So my bold prediction for this fight is I think that Joaquin Buckley might just chin Luque. I think Joaquin Buckley's going to be darting in with big hooks, and he's just going to catch Vicente Luque moving backwards out of the way. He's just going to catch him moving back. I think one of them just get through. And yeah, I have Joaquin Buckley winning by KO, I think in rounds 2 or 3. I think that prop on FanDuel is at plus 550 last time I saw it. Honestly, Jeff Neal does have better boxing than Joaquin Buckley, in my opinion, but Joaquin Buckley has that explosive X factor, and I think he has a lot of potential. And with his style, he has a lot of opportunities to catch Luque in this fight. We move on up the card to Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. So obviously, Erin Blanchfield, she's done her tape study, and I know that she's going to know that she has to drive in deep with the double leg or, start working on her actual wrestling game, working on her takedown game. She can't just do leg trips and hope it works every single time. Fiorot is going to be doing the same game plan she always does, and she's really good at it. She's a very strong fighter, I think, at her weight class. She's going to be able to keep the fight standing, in my opinion. I think she's going to pepper up Erin Blanchfield from range. I think Manon Fiorot is going to be executing Santos's game plan, but just a little bit better. I think she's going to show that she's amongst the top in her weight class, and she's going to be challenging for the title next, I think, at flyweight. All right, so now we're going to do a quick rundown on all of my actual bets for this card. Where am I actually putting my units on this card? So the first fight that I'm actually betting on is Viktoriia Dudakova versus Melissa Gatto. I think Melissa Gatto struggles against, higher level strikers and people with speed and, takedown defense. I think Viktoriia Dudakova is actually better than Gatto pretty much everywhere except for the submission grappling maybe. I think Viktoriia Dudakova is going to be winning a sound decision in this fight. And the next bet that I have for this card is going to be on Chidi Njokuani versus Rhys McKee. I have Rhys McKee moneyline here. I think that this is going to be the scenario where Chidi Njokuani is going to be completely depleted of his nutrients. I think Chidi Njokuani is going to come out there trying to win the fight early on, blistering body kicks. He's going to be giving knees up the middle. Rhys McKee's going to weather that storm, and he's just going to finish Chidi Njokuani maybe even. I think Rhys McKee has that perfect style of durability and then cardio and striking. He's going to weather that storm, and he's going to come back. I see that vision for him. We move on up the card to the next fight that I'm betting on, Nursulton Ruziboev versus Sedriques Dumas. For this fight, I actually think that it's going to go over 1.5 rounds. That's my official pick. It's at dog value, which is kind of insane to me because I don't think that either of these guys are going to get the finish early. I think that there's a good chance this fight turns into Dumas just outboxing Ruziboev from the outside, using his jab well, being careful not to put himself in danger because his coaches are pretty smart. If you watch his corner work, they're pretty smart about that. So I think this fight goes over 1.5 rounds. Next bet I have is on Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva. I have the over 1.5 rounds in that fight again. This one, I've already mentioned it. Chris Weidman has great durability, and I just don't think he gets finished in the first round by Bruno Silva. I think he'll be able to weather that storm, and especially because he's considering this to be his retirement fight, he's going to want to go out, not looking like a complete buffoon. So I have over 1.5 rounds in this fight. The last fight I'm betting on is Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. I have yes fight to go the distance. I think this is going to be a scrappy fight, very competitive. Erin Blanchfield constantly shooting for takedowns. I think she's going to maybe find some success in the early rounds if she's lucky. If not, she'll be opting for some clinch control time, and we'll see Manon Fiorot peppering up Erin Blanchfield from the outside. And Erin Blanchfield is very durable. I think she'll be able to weather that storm, make it to a decision. Manon Fiorot wins. So I have fight to go the distance. Just in case Erin Blanchfield starts dominating and I'm completely wrong, I still win if this fight goes the distance. So yeah, that's my pick. I appreciate all of you guys for watching. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to comment Upper Decky Schnecky in the comments down below so I can show love. If you want to get my picks early, you want access to more plays, more parlays, I post more picks on my Discord. Everything is free of charge. Check it out. Links are in my description down below. This card, we're going to bounce back and we're going to make a lot of money. Let's get this.